You found us. I'm glad you did, but I'm so sorry you had to. The good news is we got you. So come sit in our widow circle where trauma meets humor, and we remind you that you can not only survive, but thrive. This is Every Widow Thing.
We were getting so much great information from EMDR specialist Katie Cummings that we had to keep going. Welcome back to the conversation. This is part 2.
When you were talking about how hard the bottom up, that kind of work is, it is no joke. It's easier to just go in the therapist's office and bitch about the election or your neighbors, or it's easier to go and do that kind of therapy than what we're talking about, where you're actually reliving these like really horrific moments.
It's easy to fake it. Like you just go in and talk about what was bothering you that day and never really dive down deep into what the belief is around why that got you worked up. Mm-hmm. So
I've even had therapists that couldn't figure that out though either. So It was frustrating because you felt like you were just going and paying for that hour, and it was just a dumping session. I thought I could just talk to myself about that. The one question that kept coming up to me when I sent someone to you, I didn't realize you could do Zoom. I thought, how cool is that? Because it used to be that you had buzzers in your hands. And then the eye movement thing with the fingers bugged me so much that they removed that piece. Yeah. But when you said you could do it Zoom, how does that work differently than being in person?
So the pandemic surprised me. Right. I thought for sure there's no way this is going to translate over Zoom. But I mean, everyone's in distress. I'll try. And it works the same. And now there are different systems of people who are like, I love being in person. Like we are all bonding mammals, right? We need, and that's why sometimes talk therapy, even if it doesn't feel like it's healing from the bottom up, it's still like being with another person who is holding presence for you can still be healing.
For me, it was healing because I got it out of my own head, and at least it was verbalized, which helped me kind of put the puzzle pieces together versus trying to do it all. Maybe
doing like a brain
head.
Dump. Now it's on you. You got to take it. And remove it. So how does the tapping? Do they tap on the desk? Do they?
So it is. I mean, and you can use bilateral stimulation anytime. So there are different programs for eye movement that you can pop up on the Zoom call. And the most popular in my practice is tapping. Oh, I can. And do you tap?
I have looked into tapping, but I don't. Again, I feel like I'm doing it wrong. So, but I've watched people do all the tapping, and I love the idea of it, and I do tap myself sometimes. And I try to say some things, and then I'm like, what if I'm telling my body the wrong thing? Like I shouldn't do this without a professional.
Your own body?
Well, so there's EFT tapping, which is, you can search it up on YouTube, and there's different acupressure points that you tap that can help, what we say, down regulate your nervous system. It's really just amping up your parasympathetic.
There is something about that motion, that beat or whatever on your body. I don't know.
Well, so from an EMDR perspective, when we do bilateral stimulation tapping for processing, it's right and left, and you can do butterfly taps where you just cross your hands over your chest and you tap right, left, right, left.
I'm going. I'm like having to go right,
and isn't it,
or whichever version.
It's part of why it works, because it's almost like the CBT stuff, right? Where it's like put yourself in the here and now versus in your head with that memory or those feelings.
It is absolutely trying to stay present with the body so you don't go into disassociation, but it's so natural for us, and that's not the only way you can tap the sides of your knees if you want to try it that way. So I have some people who will go into stressful business meetings, and underneath the table they're tapping right, left on the sides of their knees, or even your feet back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, if they're in a meeting, use that example, and they're tapping. What does that do? Just make them focus more on their body, or like how do you have a meeting and doing that too, or is that just prior?
I'm doing it right now, Lacey.
I'm thinking I'm going to do
I can
this
see it in
a
your
lot.
eyes.
I'm doing it.
I'm so better at this than others.
You have no idea what's happening under this table right
To
now.
be extremely technical, is that what you want?
Yes.
So in our autonomic nervous system, we have two branches: the parasympathetic, which is our brakes, our calming system, and we have the sympathetic, which is the gas that gets us moving and into a stress state. And sometimes we need that, right? To work out or engage, like even right now, right? Like we have a sympathetic, parasympathetic balance as we're talking. And The bilateral stimulation helps increase your parasympathetic signals in your body. And when you think about it, that's the way we sway a baby when we're trying to calm them down, right, left,
the
right.
Swaddling really tight
and going back and forth, right? And balancing that right and left. Or when we go for a walk and we feel better afterwards, it's because we're balancing that right and left sides of our bodies. And so that is technically why it's helpful.
In a session, like one session would be something like you just did with Lacey, where she closes her eyes and she's imagining the event and what are those feelings, and it's talking her through the memory of it, something like that. Mm-hmm. But in another session, it could be, are you talking about the trauma while you're tapping, or is it all in one session? You do all of it?
Good question. So when we set up a target, which flying would be a target, or my car accident would be a target, we set up the specific memory. So I would say, okay, so bring me back, bring me in your head, like tell me exactly where that moment was where it was the worst. And most everyone has an answer. And then we ask, what is your belief about yourself in that memory, which highlights that maladaptive memory network, and then which feelings are coming up, and how intense it is on a 0 to 10. And so there's a really specific format that we go through for every target. And all we're looking is for that number to decrease. So, and sometimes that means that if someone's at an 8, they only get to a 7.5 that day. But sometimes people hit a 0 like that.
Wow.
The most beautiful part about it to me, I mean, I'm obsessed with this model because I've seen thousands of people find healing from it, but is that we not only identify what the trauma is, but what the belief is that you want instead.
Right.
So instead of I'm not safe, it's I'm okay, or I am safe, or I've got this. And that belief is what we call the negative cognition. And we also find the positive cognition at the same time, and how true that is. So it's clearing that target, but then moving over into the safety aspect and that positive belief and how true it is. And what's so cool about once it's at a 0, when you start working on that positive cognition, someone could say, well, I only believe that a 3 on a 1 to 7. I'm like, okay, well, what's a 3 about? And we start to work on the 3, and that's usually like a sliver that's left. And so once someone is a 0 and then everything, that positive cognition is fully true, that's when I see someone integrate and their symptoms don't come back.
Our audience is an audience of grievers, and they've suffered loss. Do you have, in your practice, do you see a lot of clients that are dealing with a loss like ours?
Certainly. I mean, EMDR is really good to help with what happened and any thinking, feeling, sensing as a part of that traumatic experience. And then grief, as we know, is you see stages, you see the
well, it's a
coping
lifelong thing.
Absolutely, it
but
is.
But you can get it from a 10 to a 2.
You can.
Except for those moments when it hits you like a 10. And I don't think that ever changes. That's the love coming back for a minute,
Always.
So
and it also can be like, I did the EMDR and I was great for a long time. I still don't have panic attacks, which is a great thing. I have anxiety, but I don't have panic attacks because that's the thing it healed the most, which is the most debilitating. You think you're going to die,
right.
Or you're having a heart attack. And at my age now, that can be a thing. So you're like, is that a panic attack, or is that I'm in good health? Why is this doing this? But I thought maybe now, since there's a new attachment, it's flying's the next thing. I was like, oh my God, when is this ever going to end? But as Whitney said, it's a lifelong thing.
The grief part of it is for sure. But the trauma part, it sounds like you were saying, the airplane was a part, they were all targets, but they had the same belief underneath of I'm not safe. I'm only going to be safe if everything's perfect. I'm only going to be safe if everything's clean. I'm only going to be safe if I take a car instead of a plane. It's the same belief. So she could have gone deeper and then the airplane wouldn't have come up
or
at
come
all.
back, or you could come back and address that particular piece of it.
Yeah, because just like with the parts work, when I named the hurt part is the one that holds the belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I work with people who have been widowed, or I have a dear friend of mine who just lost her 5-year-old son.
Ugh.
And I know it has been so
unthinkable.
Yeah. I just love them so much, and I'm with them. And it is survivor's guilt comes up a lot, right? Like a belief is it's my fault that I lived. And so that's a target. And so anything that you can trace to a belief can be a target, and someone can find the relief of desensitizing the charge or the trigger around that.
Does insurance typically cover EMDR, or it just varies?
Good question.
It can. The tricky thing, there's a lot happening politically with insurance and clinicians, because the insurance companies will pay a fraction of what our market rate is, and so they will cover EMDR for sure.
But most people are, like a lot of therapists, they don't take insurance.
Yeah,
so.
and I think it's largely because our training is so expensive, and that is just the basic. That doesn't include EMDR training, advanced EMDR training, any of that. And so I think that it's really hard for therapists as a whole to figure out how to make a living while also offering people those benefits, while also making it accessible to everyone, because everyone deserves mental health care. And so it's in a sticky spot right now.
Does it work on children? Like what age can you because we do have some listeners with young children, and they lost their father, and they're looking for help anywhere they can get it. So I was just curious.
Yeah, you can do it on work with children for sure. It is certainly more complicated in that sense, because you want to be so careful when you're working with developing brains. And so I'd say that most clinicians are on the cautious side and take more of a play therapy approach. And I've seen effective EMDR in children, and there's just different ways that we shift the work. For example, so like if they're not able to access the memory, and they're like, I really don't feel a lot around that, even though all the signs point to it being traumatic.
We both have kids like that.
Yes.
Our youngest.
Okay.
Our youngest, or my youngest, and your son, who were 4 and 6. They say they don't really remember.
And some people go, I'm sure they don't remember because they were 4 and 6, and you're like,
my 12-year-old said he didn't really remember stuff, and I was like, what?
And
but
in
it's
the same
in there.
sentence, they'll remember something like. They'll remember something at the same time frame that's so insignificant. So you're like, I know you do, but you can't tell them that, because you don't, like, you've got to be so careful.
Yes, their nervous system is telling you, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
How do you work around that? Let's say you have a patient that you can tell they're not ready. They do remember, but they don't.
Yeah, I think you still work on improving the quality of their life. So whichever ways they're willing to open up and try different things and experiment, and sometimes you'll be able to see what the protector is, and sometimes there's several, and maybe bring some mindfulness around that. And as we know, that going through different life events brings up earlier stuff, right?
Yes.
And so maybe, when if I hadn't worked on that car accident, and then my 13-year-old starts driving in 3 years, I'd be maybe having a panic attack thinking about him driving, right? And so there's no exact science related to when someone is ready, if they'll respond to it. It's cracking the coconut, which is one of my mentors said, of like, you try one aspect of the coconut, doesn't crack, you try another, like you just have to get really creative. That's more of the artistic side of doing this work.
Like if we were going to look for someone who does EMDR and you want the best one, because this is important, what would you look for?
I'm a little biased.
I want to hear. Well,
your expert opinion.
Yeah, like when my friend who lost her son is, I desperately need someone. Like, what do I do? And I am looking for someone who does not consider themselves the knower, where they are in a power over stance, believing that they're going to analyze and heal you and that it's up to them. No way. I think that there's a level of knowing that it is absolutely a collaborative process, that it is power with, which is a huge thing that I'm just advocating so much for now, is that our culture's in a power over, power under dynamic, and that is not going to get us anywhere. It is absolutely power with, and everyone deserves basic decency and respect and kindness. And I think that you can feel that when you're talking with someone. So that's the first thing that I look for. And truly, when you're going into therapy with someone, the relationship and your ability to build trust and rapport and safety is one of the biggest indicators of any of it working, no matter which model you choose.
Right.
So then I would look for if someone has done their own therapy. I know plenty of clinicians who have never done their own work, and I cannot imagine.
That's why I only had women deliver my babies. Nothing against male gynecologists, but I want someone who also has a hoo-ha. Look at my hoo-ha.
You're on to something. I mean, yes.
Just saying.
You're not wrong.
That is hilarious. No, it makes perfect sense because you've seen, like you said earlier, you've sat on both sides. So you know what your client is going through, and you also know how beneficial the work can be.
Yeah.
On a personal level. So it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I know what I'm asking them to do.
Right.
I know the price, the exhaustion, the feeling like you're zapped after a session because you just did a big release and you can't do anything else for that day. I mean, there are some people who have gone through extraordinary traumas, and after those release sessions, like, they're pretty tired, right?
I came out of my first session, ETT, like in a daze.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know where I was, what day it was, what the rest of my day looked like. I was so out of it after those sessions. It was bizarre.
You need a nap. Mine used to tell me to go take a nap now. And I literally would take it as a script.
Yes.
That my script says I have to go take a nap. And I've been trying to give that to myself even now. And we're all so accomplishment oriented in this society. The other day I don't know why it just flew out of my mouth, but this one woman, I could tell she was very big into what's your career and this and that. And I was feeling judged. And she said, well, what do you do? And I said, as little as I can get away with.
I love it.
I love that.
She said, and this was the second time I've said this to a person, but this was my friend that was sitting there could not stop laughing. And she kept pressing. She said, no, really. And I said, no, I mean, really. I am doing as little as I can get away with. Let me tell you the shows I've been watching because I felt judged and I thought I am not having it.
And I get tired of explaining it. I was literally just explaining it to someone the other day, a friend who was just like, well, why haven't you done this, this, and this yet? And I'm like, look, I mean, I have a fiance. I'm in a new partner. I have a new partner. It's great. But I'm still raising my kids by myself. I mean, I'm still parenting those 3 grieving children. I've still lost my husband. I'm still carrying all that around. I love my partner. He's super helpful. But I think people think everything's all back to normal.
Right. Oh, you got a new person now.
Everything's so easy for me now because I have Brendan, and I'm like, yeah, it's better. I mean, he's great. But a lot of things haven't changed. And I think it's easier for others to just assume because, well, first of all, everyone's thinking about themselves first, and that's natural. But I get so tired of having to explain, hey, I haven't gotten to this, this, and this because I'm still handling all the finances for myself and my 3 kids, all the college tuitions, all the travel for them, all the this, that, all the medical, all the things. I'm still doing everything for my family. And you just get tired of explaining it. And yeah, sometimes you just want to be like, yeah, I'm just, binge watching The Diplomat,
Well, in addition, you're taking on him and his family situation.
Right.
So it's actually more work. I found it was more work being with someone.
It is at times.
It is.
Because we're blending. He has a teenage daughter. We're blending our families. So yeah, but I mean, you just get tired of explaining like, hey, you know, I went through a lot. I'm still going through a lot. My kids are still going through a lot. Not the same. I had someone the other night say, oh, yeah, all these different kinds of grief. And I know, you know, you lost Frank. And now I sort of get it now that I'm an empty nester. And I was like, wait, what?
Nope.
I'm like,
it's like when someone says that they know what it's like to have a child because they have a dog.
Oh, they say they're a golf widow. A golf widow. I'm like, oh, that's so sad.
I'm always gracious about it, but I couldn't get over the like, now that I'm empty nesting, I kind of get what you went through. I was like, oh, okay.
That's why I've decided I'm not going to explain anymore, because and to come up with a thing that's kind of funny. I thought I'm going to just say what I just split out of my mouth as little as I can get away with, because it wasn't telling her how much I'm accomplishing. She was this big time attorney, and she was still going to look at me that way, and I could tell.
That's not the stuff.
It's not the real stuff. It's funny how the greatest gift that has come from all of this, and the therapy in particular, highlighted it is what is really important to me. Like the rest of it is such a waste of time and energy. How much of my life did I waste in my young years on things that did not matter? So the real gift and things like this that happen if you do the work, grief work that we call it, is that you stop worrying about what other people think. They're going to think what they're going to think no matter what.
Well, that goes back to one of those beliefs that can create a target or whatever. I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy. And then you get a weird trigger where you don't go to parties because you're afraid someone's, and then you become, you know.
But I now look at someone like that and I'm like, how sad, you know, what, like I'm analyzing that person now, like, well, what's her trauma that she can only feel good about herself if she's bragging about her law practice or
phone number in your bag, and just anybody that you like, dude, you need to
don't send me that one.
No. You need to meet my friend Katie.
Well, it makes you do it.
It's like when we get hooked in someone else's experience, right? And I'm one thing that is that I've just this whole year been working towards is just as much as I can be in non-judgment, because it's her protectors that are showing up. And so if I'm not in an analyzing way, but being like, whoa, that didn't feel right. I feel like I just came up against a protector. And are my parts coming out to show, to prove myself, or to like use humor or whatever I use to try to navigate that? Social dynamics are so tricky. But one thing that I really appreciate about this work, it's so healing, that I've noticed like over thousands of times that there are three things that rise from people clearing targets. People remember their wholeness. They return to love and compassion. The whole time. Like those are the three common denominators. And it is so beautiful to see how we can all have a wide range of beliefs and ways of being in the world. And it's these three things that we all return to as humans, which is really beautiful.
And you scares me.
Well, I love what you said, Katie, about I can see that it's going to color how I handle other people, even though I haven't ever done EMDR. Just the idea of there are triggers that create a surge, and like, why did that? So I'm going to notice more like, oh, I'm surging. Why? What's the trigger? Why is that bothering me? Or why do I feel the need to hurry up and fix instead of just let them be sad, you know? So I feel like I'm already going to be a better person. So thank you for that.
Of course. and Richard Schwartz's work, the IFS, the self-therapy, he designed it so that people can do it on their own. Yeah. So any of his work is so helpful because you can find the part connected to the surge.
Right.
And then just be mindful of it.
So people could Google Richard Schwartz.
Oh, yeah.
Or watch Inside Out.
Well, let me ask, this is to me, one of the most important. Are you taking new clients? And if so, how do they reach you?
So I have a website. It's katiecummingslpc.com. And I have 1 or 2 spots right now, and then a wait list if there's
Great.
If anyone
but they put it on our socials, so everyone, and at the end of in our notes for this episode, so that you can find her. Thank you. This has been so. I could
thank you for your time.
I want to dive more into the.
I want us to hang out all the time. Is what I want.
So awesome.
There's so many different ways that you can go through this grief journey. And we hope that today we've shown you a couple, because we touched on a couple of different things all through EMDR, but we're just hopeful that you can find something that works for you. And if one thing doesn't work, try something different, because it depends on where you are in your own trauma, what's going to work and what you're ready for, what your nervous system is ready for. Right,
and we
Katie?
also have our insider group.
Yes, we want to encourage you, if you are looking for a space to ask more questions or to connect with other widows and widowers, we have a Facebook group called Every Widow Thing Insiders. We would love for you to join that. And obviously we're available through social media. Just DM us. We want to help you move forward. There is a way. There is light. Keep going. We believe in you. We love you. And we'll be back on another episode soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.